take my pain and make it something beautiful.
Welcome to How to Create Equity, the world of men. I would say great men. There are some that are great, as we'll see, and there are some that are not. This is the next episode with a little bit of tongue and cheek, and I have had some feedback, some great feedback, so thank you, and some developmental feedback, because I am done but not complete, putting myself out there with a different lens, a Black feminism lens, a lens from other countries, and a lens that brings in interconnectedness of my autistic AuDHD brain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link out always to how I see that interconnectedness, and even if it means going into other episodes, that will keep this one shorter. So today it's all about leadership, environmentalism, colonialism, imperialism, patriarchy, DOGE or DOGE from a previous episode, Ministry of Truth when we talk about censorship and suppression of information, and freedom of speech. As ever, this will come in, but shockingly, it will come into the lens and start off with the meeting between Trump and Zelensky. Have a listen.
Entire meeting, you said thank you. You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning.
So apart from, let's go a little bit back to the hand gesture of the licking Trump's backside in terms of bowing down to him from the VP, to the belittlement from Trump, to someone who is keeping Russia from the gates of the rest of the world and who has been standing. Many people thought that that conflict, which is a war, was going to be over in days, and the Ukrainian people have been strong, yes, with support, but let's take it. They have hearts of courage. They have so much will within them that they have kept the rest of this world safe. So when you see a meeting which is set up into bad cop, good cop, commander and the person underneath them, VP, literally licking ass and saying, have you said thank you? This bullying, this you must appreciate did not land well. And we actually come to a full circle moment. If you do read the book, My Grandmother's Hands, and you look at the brutality within Europe, you look on white and white brutality, which then transitioned when we went through the transatlantic slave trade, and that became white on black brutality and trauma. But full circle, we saw this play out between a white man and a white man. The fact-checking by CNN shows that he had said thank you 33 different occasions to the American people. Believe me, this is not about licking ass to a president. This is about to the people. And they had put so much misinformation themselves into the meeting, stating that they had given 350 billion. This was incorrect. It was in fact 183 billion. And not all of this was money. So this setup was deplorable, to say the least. But black and brown people, we have been there before. Even if it's with a gun to your head, you must be grateful. You should be thankful you have a job, because you must come from a really poor country of where you have nothing. You should be thankful that we're giving you life, because maybe, hey, we're not going to shoot and brutalize your family. But what's really interesting is the misunderstanding from Trump when he says you don't have all the cards. Now, yes, he's in a very tricky position, Zelensky. But the payback that he's getting as if they have nothing, the very part of the deal was on there, was American jobs, American money, 500 billion in raw materials. That in itself wasn't all on the plate, but it was a cut, a monetization of that, 50% over the period in terms of the revenues from that raw material, which the USA does not have, would be going to the American people. And this was always the case in terms of colonialism. Those raw materials, the plundering of other countries, is coming back. But make no mistake, it was a setup from the very beginning, of which Lindsey Graham admitted to. Listen to this.
I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait.
He talked this morning, so he admits that it was a baited conversation. Yes, people. And not only was it a baited conversation, it was one that used both physical and psychological warfare. Watch this carefully. I've put it in slow motion for you. Yes, that's right. All of this was by intent. But I think what they underestimated was this is a leader with integrity and has gone through so much psychological warfare, more than Trump or Vance could even put him into, that the decorum that the respect the president of Ukraine had, and how he held up, there was one great man in that room. And when he came out afterwards, he still came and thanked the people. He didn't fly straight off people. He came on to Fox News and he spoke. Now, first of all, he did speak up that should not have been on camera.
It was not good. I think it was not good because we had a lot of different dialogues. I'm always open to media, but there are very sensitive things. I just want to be honest, and I just want our...
And he's right. These were sensitive topics. This should have never been something that was put out on air, but it was done by intent. This was blatant disrespect of another world leader. And please remember, this was a grandson of one of the brothers, one of four, who survived the Nazis. The three other brothers were shot. This kind of public lashing is something that Black and brown leaders have gone through before. It's something that Black and brown people know well. It is televised for oppression. It is televised for, let's bring in the theme of supremacy. And that is the message that Trump wanted to put out. Hey, look at me. I'm in power. I'm pulling the strings. We know these tricks. On top of the tricks of going towards someone's facade. How, look, your hair doesn't look professional.
Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest, why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see people. Do you own a suit?
Yeah.
But the fact is, the basics of going down to that level, of going low, of what this person is wearing, attacking someone's facade in a time of war, people. This president had a kill order against him, and he had the invitation to evacuate. You know what he did? He decided to stay with his people. And look at Churchill and how he's dressed, with going into the ground. And look at the likes of Trump, who avoided the draft. There are good men in the world, people, and there are good women. And it doesn't matter what we wear. What we wear to get shit done is important. What we do is important. But hey, when it's someone else wearing something else, because they're a tech bro, as I covered in DOGE or DOGE, and because they're purposely going out, as they have admitted in Project 2025, with a strategy of trauma inflicted in a warfare style on their very own people. It's okay if you're not wearing a suit, but if you're Zelensky and you're actually in a time of war, it's wrong. What do they want to do? Bring back the Avengers in some kind of suit-wearing warfare? Because you can't fight a war in a suit. But what also is happening and why is actually behind this is Russia. And we go to misinformation. If you remember in my video in the Ministry of Truth, we go to VP Vance in Munich advocating for free speech. But what that actually means is advocating for misinformation, hate speech, and no fact checking. And this actually happened within the meeting. They referred to Zelensky only having the support of 4% of his people. Fact check, people. He has over 50% support of his people and was voted in by 70% of his people. Listen to Zelensky's information on this, of where this came from.
Since we are talking about 4%, we have seen this disinformation. We understand that it is coming from Russia. We understand and we have evidence that these numbers are being discussed between America and Russia.
Now, of course, he has to stay very respectful because he is negotiating for his people. He has put his people before him, before ego, unlike Trump. He still needs this deal to go through. So let's go there. This misinformation, why are these channels going on between Russia and America? Please look and do not be shocked that the Select Committee intelligence report, the investigation into Russian interference, has already put and made Trump the big bet for Putin. Putin was rubbing his hands with glee when this was happening. I'll go to the Danish news because, as I said, this is a lens that I bring. If you go to a program which talks about the truth and goes on to the edge and it speculates, it already turns the relationship from America of being someone that you can't rely on anymore, unfortunately, sadly. And there is a cartoon that depicts this to its best, with a knife in the back. And unfortunately, that's very much what we saw at the meeting between Zelensky and Trump. But where was the moment that it went so wrong? And we look at leadership. Leadership goes to emotions. And from much of my work, working with CEOs, working with N-1s, working with N-2s, and you look at coaching and you start to get to feelings. A leader will correct you if it's the wrong feeling that they're feeling, or the wrong feeling that they wanted to put out. And the feeling in the setup of that meeting was all about strength. But when Zelensky pointed out that if you did not have an ocean between you, you would feel it. This was not the message that Trump wanted to give. Listen to this.
We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position.
This hit a nerve. And why did it hit a nerve? Because he's actually completely right. It doesn't matter if there's an ocean between you. What is happening is a shifting of world order and a shifting of power. And this is where we come back to patriarchy, colonialism, and imperialism. Listen to the previous leader of MI6.
I think we are in a new era where, by and large, international relations aren't going to be determined by rules and multilateral institutions. They're going to be determined by strong men and deals.
By strong men. Now, normally as a Black feminist, I would correct you to say, hey, women, but what we are seeing and what we have seen is the shift to patriarchy, the shift to masculinity, and the shift to men. And this has very strong consequences when we think about the redrawing of maps and we think about what Trump has done. He has set the tone, drawing into question Panama, Greenland, the Gulf of America, as you will see in my Ministry of Truth video. Listen to this.
Tycoon close to Putin, who's sanctioned by the US, who is basically saying, well, Trump has now laid claim to Greenland, to Panama, the Panama Canal. He's laid claim to Canada, to Gaza. If he wants us to recognize his claims in the Western Hemisphere, the US is right to rule the Western half of the world. Then they must recognize our sphere of strategic interest in Ukraine and also in Central Asia.
How do you respond?
Yes, from east to west, global north, global south, this metric and this rechanging and recutting of maps. Oh my gosh, Were we back there in colonialism? Men wanted more power and more greed. Suddenly we've taken this reversal back, and that's what we're seeing. And we are seeing what I call the three horsemen. We've got Trump, who's already made his stab. Putin is going, well, if you can do it, hey, why can't I do it? He already invaded Ukraine. What does that call into next? Poland, Finland? And then you've got Xi Jinping. What does that call next in terms of China, Taiwan? What is stopping an invasion? Don't know who the fourth horseman of the apocalypse is, but this is very dangerous. So when Trump calls in, you're calling World War III, I actually think I'm suggesting he means himself.
People, you're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned.
The only person gambling, as I said, is Trump. And because of his greed and this resplitting of world maps, he is role modeling, walking the talk, which others want to copy, which has an escalation into conflict. The MI6 previous leader points this out, and perhaps points out Trump's blind spots and limitations, because he is a salesman. He's someone that deals with land. He thinks this is just about a few pieces of territory and land that Russia wants, but it is not.
Putin are talking about different things. So Trump thinks this is about territory, characteristically as a real estate guy. It's about land, giving land to Russia in return for peace. It's not about territory, and Putin said it's about sovereignty. Putin was super clear when he started this war that the existence of Ukraine as a sovereign and free country was an unacceptable affront to Russian security. He will not stop until Ukraine isn't a country.
Now, indigenous people know that often our existence was not okay. Look at Gaza. The very existence of indigenous people has, in many cases, the intent of what supremacy has come with, to wipe out cultures, people. Make no mistake, sovereignty and existence of countries is under threat. And all that Zelensky was trying to do was explain this. He was trying to explain that we've been there before, we've offered a ceasefire, and you know what? Putin went back on it.
Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about?
Yes, JD, or Trump. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? And while we're there, can we go to Gaza? What kind of diplomacy are we talking about? There's a ceasefire, but you're talking about building a Riviera? Colonialism always went to more power, more land. And actually, at the heart of this deal, what's really interesting is it's also about raw materials. But listen, and let's bring in the voice of the environment and what's going to suffer.
Of the raw earth, and what we do have is protected by the environmentalists, but that can be unprotected, but still it's not very much. They have among the best in the world in terms of raw earth. So we're going to be using that, using it for all of the things we do, including AI and including weapons and the military, and it's.
We're going to be using it. We're going to be taking it. Plundering Africa is something that has been done for years. What's at the root? This 500 billion, which Ukraine is reportedly having, and the deal that's on the table, which gives the US 50%. And what is this funding? This is funding the AI race people. Please look at, I'm a proponent and I work with AI governance. But where do we need AI and where do we not need AI? Instead of splattering this everywhere, because it's also linked now then to these conflicts. And this is where we really need to think, people, because he's also talking about, yes, I can take away that environmental protectionism that we have. We need to protect the environment. Colonialism and the destruction of the environment, see, my ground is shaking, has always been there. This is not a joke. This is a wake-up call for Europe.
That as a European, it's a massive wake-up call. Whatever you think about this, all the smoke and dust and mirrors and complexity, and I don't know how it's going to end, I know one thing for certain, which is that Europe will own more of this at the end than it did at the beginning. Now,
I'm glad he pointed that out. And yes, in Europe, we need to get our act together. We need to get unified. And he speaks to hard assets. If Trump had his way, he wouldn't just be taking out the environment. I swear he'd actually even be bringing back slavery because he would benefit from it. There is nothing morally bankrupt for him that he would not do. Trump already did us over in Afghanistan.
He said that Putin should not be allowed to be seen to win. He seems to understand that as a concept, although I accept that his tone has changed. He was quite complicit in Afghanistan, even though he pinned it on Joe Biden. He gave away the farm before it even started, and that led to the fiasco. He can't own a fiasco like that.
Trump was complicit in Afghanistan. So what do we do in Europe? Well, I would like to take my inspiration from France. Because if there's one group of people that know the power of the people, is France. Vive la France. When something is not with the will of the people, they will go and blockade the roads. They will go with tractors. And the will of the people needs to be, what environment do we need to be here for our children? What environment do we need to speak about human rights and people, that we have fairness, that we have equity, and that we have equality? And the second energy that we need to bring from France is la résistance. And la résistance, feminine. The resistance coming from the French people also involved women. And women, that feminine energy, masculine energy, that anyway can be interchanged. Women need to be at the table. Because if we go along with the three horsemen and we go along with this masculine male energy that we're talking about at the moment, which are dividing up parts of the world, going back to colonial times, going back to enslavement, going back to patriarchy, this is not taking the world forward in any positive effect. But that said, we do have one great man, and we do have good men in the world. So what do we need to do to come together? We need great men, and we need great women to humanize. And I want to start bringing it to a close and listen to someone who does think about their people and the way that he put it.
When you say about the number, each person is important. When you say about 1 million of losses, we don't have any million of losses. When you speak about the territories, maybe some territories and etc., it's not just territory, it's houses.
He speaks from the heart. He's speaking about people. He's speaking about homes, real people, and that's what it all comes down to. He came back after that humiliation attempt by Trump and Vance. He came back for his people. At the end of the day, Zelensky could have said, yep, it's all off the table, as Trump is saying, we don't know. You know what he said? He has put his ego aside. And when he was asked, does he think there's any hope? Because actually the key concern is the people. This was his response.
Yes, of course, because it's relations more than two presidents. It's the historical relations, strong relations between our people. And that's why I always began with to thank your people, from our people. And this is the most important.
Great leaders, it's never about you. It's about your people. It's about the relations. And I do hope the relations and the people of the United States are with human rights, are with the environment, and are with humanity. So how do we create equity? We start thinking more interconnected. I've pointed you to different themes. And the world of men needs to go further. It needs to go further to include women. It needs to go further in terms of leadership. It needs to go further in terms of the environment, and we do not need to be going back to colonialism, imperialism, or patriarchy. A little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but very serious, because we need a new dawn, and for that to come about, we need the power of the people. Viva la resistance.
Bow and arrow to a gunfight. I'm out of my league. I didn't know what this would feel like. I can't help but feeling let down deep